Welcome to Plan 9 Crunch. I'm Doug Gibson, and we're getting to the new year now. What are some cool movies for the new year? There is a 1970s cheapo horror called New Year's Evil. Stars Roz Kelly. She was best known as Pinky Tuscadero in the show Happy Days. But you know what? There's more alternatives than that. There's a really good movie from Sweden that was made in 1921 called The Phantom Carriage. And the director and star was Victor Hostrom. And it's a really fascinating film about a man who's a ne'er-do-well and a drunk and has treated his family badly. And he's taken on a carriage ride by Death, who's actually his former friend Georges. And he gets to see his life and all the mistakes he's made and the effects they have on other people. This film is kind of a morality tale, and it reminds me a lot of A Christmas Carol or other movies. We're going to watch a couple of scenes from this film. Let me give a little bit of background. David Holm is in a graveyard with his buddies, and Holm is a man who has abused his responsibility as a father and a provider and a husband, and they're just sitting there getting drunk and everything, and they're talking about a legend of a phantom carriage where the last guy to die during the year, he sort of takes over and for the next year drives people around and serves in this haunted carriage, brings people who have died. So eventually they get into a fight and David Holm is knocked out and his spirit leaves his body. And he suddenly sees the carriage coming. And like I mentioned earlier, the driver is his friend Georges, who died earlier. Now I want to give some more background. There is a Salvation Army nurse named Edith who's trying to help David because she loves David and his wife, Anna. And David's rebuffing it all. And Edith is about to die of consumption. Now consumption is important here. We'll talk more about it, okay? So David keeps spurning all these offers, and when he goes back and sees his life, he sees some of the ugly things he's done. And one is where he hatchets down a door to get to his wife, Anna, who is trying to protect their two children. And many people believe, and I think it's probably right, that Stanley Kubrick used this scene, or this scene as the inspiration for a scene of Jack Nicholson going after Shelley Duvall in The Shining. So most of you have seen that scene where he'll say, "Here's Johnny," or something like that, right? And it's a horrific scene. Why don't we watch the same type of scene from The Phantom Carriage, which is 103 years old. Jack, can you do that for us? Okay, that's Anna. And she's with the kids, and he's being a total jerk. That's David Holm. After this scene, I want to explain some of the context too. She's trying to protect them. He wants in. If you've seen the Stanley Kubrick film, The Shining, you'll definitely see parallels here. Here comes the hatchet axe. Now she faints. he has a bit of a snarky word for her right now, I believe. Not yet. No, he goes. Now the difference between The Shining and The Phantom Carriage is Jack Nicholson wants to kill his wife and kids in that film. He gives his wife some water here. Okay, we can go away now, Jack. He says it wasn't as easy to run away this time. Still the snark. And he's seeing this in flashback with the ghost. I want to mention something. Now, this woman, his wife, Anna, is not in danger. And the subtext of this film, I mentioned earlier, consumption, which is essentially tuberculosis. And consumption was called consumption for one reason. It was a lung disease that would cause people to lose a tremendous amount of weight as if it was consuming their body. And consumption was pretty fatal back then. And so the reason she's hiding from her husband is she believes he has consumption, and if he gets in there, he'll make her and the kids ill. All right? I mentioned earlier that The Phantom Carriage is a mixture of morality tale, mystical fantasy, and also even a horror film. And the original book that The Phantom Carriage is based on is a novel from 1912 called Thy Soul Shall Bear Witness. And it was by a famous Swedish author named Selma Lagerlöf. She was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. And Thy Soul Shall Bear Witness is basically a novel about efforts to prevent consumption, okay, which of course was, like I mentioned, was a major health disease 100 plus years ago. So it's kind of interesting that the film, generally considered in the horror category today, was also a public morality tale. I wanted to mention real quick that I mentioned earlier that this was a lot like A Christmas Carol. And he goes back in time, and he's going to see a scene we're going to see in a few minutes where it's a potential for redemption for him, where he sees something that he can't stop because he's a ghost, but he's pleading with the driver, the ghostly driver with him. Before we get to that scene, I want to talk about the amazing special effects in this film. They used double exposure, and later you'll see the ghost with him. And they took it to many different layers, though, with the film. So you can see through them. And the interesting thing was, back then they had to crank everything for the speed. And so they had to crank exactly perfect to make the double images work on the film. This took a tremendous amount of time in post-production, but the film was worth it. It came to the United States, and in the United States it was called, what was the title? You don't see this title anymore, but it was called, hold on a second here, guys. The Stroke of Midnight in the U.S., but of course now it's restored to its hour and 47 minutes as The Phantom Carriage. Now let's go to the scene that's almost A Christmas Carol-like when he sees his wife. This is present time. They go through the past and the present. He sees his wife preparing poison to kill her and the two kids because she fears they all have consumption and there's no use fighting it and they're going to die. And she's so full of despair because of the way he's treated her that we have to see this right now. Let's go to it, Jack. There's the Phantom. I love the way this slowly happens, increasing the tension and the anguish that David Holm is feeling. Look at the strong evangelical, spiritual motif to this movie. He has to confess his sins. And then he says, let me take the punishment. Do what you like to me, my Lord. Only spare the three of them. And that's almost a lot like what Ebenezer Scrooge does when it comes to Tiny Tim. Okay, we can go away now. The Spirit's saying he no longer needs to grieve over him. I'm not going to give away the ending of this movie. I really urge you to watch it. Turner Classic Movies usually shows it this time of year because it's essentially a New Year's movie. I haven't seen it, but on TCM's schedule, I might be wrong. You can check. It is available on YouTube in an excellent print, and it's worth watching. It's a film that is in the book 1001 Films You Have to See Before You Die or something. That's a pretty popular book and fun to read. And it's basically considered a classic now. Victor Hostrom came to America and had some success as a director. He directed a famous silent film called The Wind, which is a pretty good one. And a lot of people compare this film to The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which came out, a few years before this one did. But this is considered a classic now, and it's something at Plan 9 Crunch we watch all the time, and we urge you to. And I'm Doug Gibson. This is Plan 9 Crunch. We're at YouTube, where you can subscribe to us. You can also subscribe to us on TikTok. And we're at Facebook, and our blog is plan9crunch.com, where we have right now dueling reviews of the new Nosferatu to read. And thank you for your time, and have a happy new year. Although this probably will air a little bit after, but enjoy 2025. And that's a wrap. I hope you're able to work out the middle part.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay. Now I can do a read really quick.